Hi there. Just lately I've been thinking about the refugee crisis and asylum in general. And this has become an extremely polarised debate where the left believe we should admit as many people as humanly possible to show our compassion. And that's a completely wrong-headed way to approach this issue. Because the clue is in the name, refugee, refuge. We provide refuge from wars, and this is predicated on the idea that wars eventually end. And if we're looking at the world in terms of growth and international development, nations need their people, and if they've been through a trauma such as a civil war, then they need their people back. And to allow these people to come here and settle permanently, you're essentially facilitating the brain drain. This is especially acute in Africa, where we're taking their brightest and best, and not so brightest. But this also extends to Ukraine. We are hearing from so many Ukrainian refugees that they are now settled in Britain, they've got into a routine, they've got into a rhythm, they've built a life here, they don't want to go back. But after the war, whenever that happens, whether it's 2 or even 5 years from now, Ukraine is going to need its young people to rebuild a functioning country. And if you don't have the people, you can't rebuild. So this idea that refuge should mean permanent settlement has to be challenged, and you can do so not from a perspective of we just don't want the foreigners here. You can put it to people that really these people shouldn't be here at all. If they're gonna be held in a state of refuge, then it should be as close as possible to their place of origin to facilitate their return and to facilitate the rebuilding. Because if you don't rebuild, then all you end up with is a dysfunctional mess of a country that never rebuilds. And this is where I think the UK has a role internationally. I think it doesn't do to simply pull up the drawbridge. This is one of the problems I have with contemporary nationalism, is that it's sort of solipsistic and believes that, oh, if we're neutral, then the world's problems will stay the world's problems. But that's not true. You look at Ireland. Ireland has never invaded anyone. They don't get involved in bombing people. They're not intervening in the Middle East. And yet still, they are a target for mass immigration. And so the nationalist right has conceded that point to the left, that, oh, we only get immigration because we intervene and we bomb. Well, that's just not the case. That's bunkum. I think that if we're going to enforce the idea that refuge should be temporary and on the same continent as country of origin, then it's in our interests to facilitate that and to help make that happen. I think that foreign aid does have a role in foreign policy. I believe it certainly could be channeled into running and securing large refugee camps. We're about to see another breakout in Sudan. All of that area for the last probably the 20 years has been a funnel of immigration to Europe. And one of the reasons is because it has remained in a state of dysfunction. With every new disturbance, there's yet more displacement of people who never go back. So you're eventually dealing with very young countries with large population growth, but poor education, low IQ. They don't know how to run civic systems. So it is in our interest to look at this from an international development perspective. And this is not about funneling our cash into foreign aid projects, because we know that that doesn't particularly work, and we know that it gets funneled to NGOs, and and people are creaming money off the top. So we need to think about disempowering the NGOcracy. And one idea that's been put to me, and I don't hate this idea, that we should have our own sort of volunteer Peace Corps. Time and time again, people raise the prospect of bringing back national service. I happen to oppose that, especially if it's compulsory. But if we had a voluntary system where people could go overseas and work on particular projects, I think that could work, particularly if it was in conjunction with setting up refugee camps. And then all the virtue signalling narcissists who believe that we should do more, there's an avenue for them to actually go and do that if they really want to express their compassion. Whether or not that would work, I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there as a topic for debate. But it still comes back to the fact that Britain cannot secure its borders exclusively at the borders. This is something I've spoken of in terms of policy, in that certainly dealing with illegal immigration isn't just a case of securing the airports and the seaports. You still need behind the border surveillance systems. You still need, local authority inspections and all of that. I've gone into that in quite some detail over the last year. That deals with the behind the border systems. We've got plenty of know-how and ideas on how to secure the borders, but we still need to be thinking in the sort of middle distance and the far distance. What are the things that are driving migration? We've heard about the pull factors of giving benefits to foreigners. Well, what are the push factors? And something I highlighted on the Northern Variant Substack last night is we're seeing illegal Chinese fishing boats destroying coastal economies. And we had a serious instance of that around 2001. Collapsed the local fishery off the coast of West Africa, destroyed the local economy, and soon the mothers and daughters were going into prostitution to feed the family. And what you get from that is an AIDS epidemic. So you got poverty and disease, and guess what? You've got migration. So yeah, I think really there is not only a role for foreign aid, I believe there's a role for the British military in fending off these Chinese fishing boats. Britain has a long tradition of securing the world's trade routes and tackling piracy. Well, Chinese fishing boats, they are pirates. They've come to plunder. And there's also the suggestion that there's state surveillance boats mixed among them. So, and on board we find the crews on board the Chinese boats are barred from leaving, have their identity documents destroyed. So it's slavery at sea. And what is the Royal Navy if not an anti-slavery organisation? So I think we have a right to do that. I think we should be doing that, and I think we should be thinking in terms of how our foreign policy and how international aid and how our own military can benefit our domestic objectives, one of which is controlling immigration. The reason people are so down on things like foreign policy and foreign aid, because it usually means liberal interventionism, sticking our nose where it isn't wanted or needed, and doling out money to questionable causes without accountability. That's because there's no core objective. If we've got some core objectives of what foreign policy is supposed to achieve, then maybe we might actually get somewhere. Anyway, that's all I've got for the moment. Hope that sparks some debate. This is my first proper recording with the new studio setup. Any advice on sound levels, light levels, I'd very happily receive that. Thanks for listening, and catch you next time. Cheers.